Hey everybody, thank you so much for clicking that link. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I'm excited to be able to share this with you. This is something I'm going to try to do every other week, maybe every week, depending on the rhythm and how this goes. But you're getting this because you are a servant leader, you're a staff volunteer at our church or a staff leader at our church. And I just am so very excited that you have done what you're doing. I'm so thankful for how you sow into our church, all the sacrifices you've made. I know that the other campus pastors would all agree that I have by far the best volunteer staff of any of the campuses. I know that. I am very blessed. And I know that God has a great intention for APC Deer Lakes because of that. And I just wanted to do this because I know that I've been talking about since I came on, I was talking about we could do the quarterly meetings. The one got canceled by weather, and then the next week wasn't any relevance to what I was going to share. And I was looking forward to schedule the next one, and I thought, you know what? It should have been in April, but April is just so massively scheduled. And I'm thinking we had the all staff retreat there at the end of April. And I'm thinking, you know what? This is it just doesn't match the rhythm either of our church life, my life personally, or yours. But this does now. And one of the reasons that it does is actually because of Pastor Bob, who's taking on a lot of my other responsibilities each week. So thankful for what he's doing and thankful that he's there, enables me to think about stuff like this. And actually, his example in doing this and the example of us being able to do that with him actually is very relevant to what I wanted to share with you today. But again, this one's going to be a bit longer, but it's not going to be like this normally. It's going to be 5 minutes or less normally when I don't have to explain a whole lot and I can go right into what it is that I want to share with you. All right, so what I want to share with you today is a concept that came from a conference that I went to a couple of weeks ago. Now, before you say, oh boy, Vince went to a conference and now we got all this other stuff to do, it's not really the case here. In fact, most of that conference is actually not relevant to someone in my position. It was more built for like church planters and maybe if you're planting a new campus. But in my role, it didn't really have a whole lot. But the opportunity in that is that there was one specific thing out of one session that I was like, oh, God's speaking to me in that. That's really for us. I don't get cluttered by a whole big bunch of other visions and thoughts because there was one major takeaway that I knew I could share with you because it hit my heart. And so that is this. I was at Dr. John Chung, who is a person who's been a consultant for a number of decades and is a very brilliant man with multiple degrees and has studied church growth. He was a pastor himself, has studied church growth in multiple scenarios, was boiling down innovation and creativity, but then he did touch on growth principles a little bit. And I'm someone who would be very happy pastoring any size campus. I'm not a particularly goal-oriented guy. I do tend to achieve throughout my life. I have achieved things, but I'm not motivated necessarily by the goal. I really love the process and I love to celebrate the result, but I'm much more motivated by innovation and creativity and how do you get to where you're going. Those are the things that get me very excited. But as a result of that, goals tend to be surpassed when those things are a part of the ministry that you're doing. But I do have a vision, despite the fact that I'm not really motivated by goals, and I'm not necessarily someone who is like, I want to have the most ginormous campus possible. That's not really what gets me up and gets me praying in the morning. But I do have a vision that God gave to me before I was even fully in the campus pastor role of God growing this place. That size in this particular case is an issue for God. That the Eastern Outpost of Allison Park Church here in Deer Lakes, he wants us to have some heft to us for whatever purposes will be revealed in time, besides just bringing lots and lots of people to a healthy church environment and into his kingdom. Those would be obvious and for anybody. But one of the things that John said, because of that vision, I think this is why it really appealed to me. He said, is one of the core principles, one of the most consistent principles of growth that he's ever known or ever had is this. He said, if you double the number of your volunteers, I can guarantee you that within 18 months, you will double the size of your congregation. He said it's one of the only principles of church growth that is consistent no matter where, no matter who, throughout the entire world, no matter what. If you double the number of volunteers serving in your church, within 18 months, your church will double in its size of attendance. And that started me thinking. That's something I wanted to share with you as volunteer leaders, is to change a question that you may have been asking yourself. And that question, I think we approach our ministries from a standpoint of, how many people do I need to get what I'm supposed to do done? And I think we kind of function at that level. And what I'd like for all of you to do is take a step back and ask yourself instead, how many people can I use to do what needs to be done? Not just how many people do I need to get it done. How many people can I use? What can I subdivide? How many more people can I include in this? Now, I know for some of you, you're probably thinking, well, I can't even feel the holes that I've got. And I totally get that. And recruitment's always an issue. But some of us may be either full or maybe almost full, or it's just kind of getting routine. We have some holes, but people step in and we're just kind of going on, it's always the same people. And you start thinking, how many more people can I include? What more can be created here? And for some of us, that might mean, what can I delegate that I'm currently doing? Who else can I raise up to do what I'm doing? And of course, part of that principle is, you may not necessarily know what the next thing is for you. You're giving away your tasks. You're giving away your time, giving away what you're serving. Now, all of this has a principle that I have seen, that I've, since going to the conference, I've been able to see in a certain way in Scripture. And I want to share that with you right now. I said this video is going to be a little bit longer. It won't be like this normally, but I wanted to share this with you. And this concept that I kind of came across comes from Matthew chapter 5. It's a Sermon on the Mount, famous as titled the Sermon on the Mount is what it's become. But the actual scenario played out like this. Jesus saw a whole bunch of crowds, and he goes up on a mountainside. And he doesn't start yelling, hey, everybody listen to me. He goes up on the mountainside, and it says that he taught his disciples. So he sees the crowds, goes up on a mountain, and he teaches all the people that were just with him right there, his disciples, the ones that were immediately gathered. Those are the ones that he spoke to. So when you hear the Beatitudes, blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor, etc., those Beatitudes were not shouted from Sermon on the Mount. Those things were spoken just to his leaders right in front of him. But then an interesting thing happens, is that we can tell from the tense and the verbiage that is used in Greek that Jesus began to change what he was saying into something more oratory. And we know that probably somewhere around verse 17 or so, when he begins to talk about he's just finished the stuff about being the salt of the earth, which is kind of the last thing that he says to the disciples. And he begins to talk about, I have not come to abolish the law, but I have come to fulfill it. That's when he begins to speak to larger numbers of people. And so we know that, it's implied that lots of people began to fill in that mountainside now. Now we got a crowd is moving from wherever they were into the space that Jesus had created. Okay, this happens again a while later. This actually is recorded in John 6. So it's in Matthew 14, in which he's actually escaping crowds, but then he turns and he sees the crowds. He has compassion on them, and he does exactly the same thing. He goes up on a mountainside, and he begins to teach the disciples. He doesn't say, hey, come on, guys, follow me. He gets up there and he teaches the disciples in front of him. He creates space behind the disciples, and people begin to filter in. Now, by this time, he's done a lot of miracles and he's done a lot of preaching, so people are much more aware of who he is. But we know that lots and lots and lots of people filled in because it was there that the miracle of feeding the 5,000 takes place. So huge crowds fill in to the space that he created beyond the immediate disciples. This is why I think this principle works in terms of church growth. We need to create space beyond our leaders. We need to create space. We need to raise up people to do more things. What can we create within our serve ministries? What ministries can be created within the context of the areas that we've been able to oversee? I'm not talking about creating whole other different ministries. I'm talking about within it is what can we do to raise up people right within the purview that we have been given. Or in your particular case, as you delegate even the very things that you're currently doing to other people, then you might be able to think in terms of maybe there's an additional kind of ministry that was in the area of purview within APC Deer Lakes, or there is something outside now that I now have the margin for outside of APC Deer Lakes that I can do. The reason this is important, and the reason that I think it also happens within church growth, is another principle that I have witnessed personally in the ministries that I have grown in the past, is this is what typically happens when a ministry doesn't consistently do this. So there's really a consequence to not doing this. This is really important. If we don't do this, there's actually a consequence, and that's this. The typical thing that happens is somebody does something they've been doing for a really long time. Most likely this would be one of you. Okay, you're doing the same thing. You're doing a lot of the same stuff. And eventually you kind of burn out, or you just get bored. Okay, and then what typically is you think that this is just taking my time. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to spend more time with my family. I want to have more balance with this and that and the other. And that's what we begin to think in our minds. And then you go to the pastor and you say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, been really great, but I'm doing it for a long time. Pastor, of course, says, I absolutely understand. You have. Thank you so much for what you're doing. We celebrate, yay. And then you kind of go on to what you think is just going to be a little bit more balanced. But the thing is that it's not fulfilling. You know, most people end up getting to that place where they're not fulfilled anymore. They're not sure what they're supposed to do. And they begin to have feelings that they just withdraw. They begin to get more isolated. They begin to wonder, what am I supposed to do? And in some cases, the more extreme cases, they actually stop attending as much, and then they even potentially leave. But when someone intentionally says, I'm going to raise somebody up into what I'm doing, usually when they're intentional about it, listen, I don't even know what's coming next, but I'm going to intentionally raise this person up. Their mind is thinking about what's next while they're raising. Look, I don't need to do this. I'm not feeling burned out. I've been doing that. I'm perfectly fulfilled, but I'm going to raise up this person because this is what I'm supposed to do. So I'm going to do this. But the whole time you're doing it now, because you're still kind of have this energy in your heart that, you know what, I'm not bored, but I still want to serve. You're already thinking about the next step. What's the next thing for me? What is the next thing that I'm able and capable of doing? What is the next thing that God is putting on my heart? Now, when you do this and you do it effectively, you're going to have people come to you even as you're subdividing. You know, if we have twice as many, I'm just not picking on you, Alicia, maybe you're twice as many ushers, or Jeff, you've got an assistant production leader or whatever. You know, I don't know what it is. Whatever it is that you create, you might be sitting there and you're like, okay, I've done this, but there's not a whole lot for them to do. And they might be coming to you and saying, I don't know if I'm really useful. I don't know what I have a lot to do. So, well, what do you? Here's a crucial moment. In that crucial moment, and somebody's going to come to you and say, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do, or I don't know if I'm really having an impact. And you say, what's God speaking to you about that? What's God saying to you about that? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm supposed to keep doing this or not. I said, well, why don't you pray about it and see, maybe God will put something on your heart in terms of something more that you can do, or another way that you might want to participate in our ministry. You know, there's more that you can do. I can share that with you. Maybe it's a way of raising somebody else up to another step. Sometimes the people that have been in solid roles for you for a long while are perfectly happy and want to stay there. And finding that person to raise up into your role is going to be a very new person. It just started, but it's sitting there saying, I don't really know if this is for me. It's not really engaging me that much. So, well, we have other things you want to do some more. You can help me directly. Oh, yeah, I'd really love to be able to do that. You know, I have kind of an administrative ability. I'd love to be able to learn stuff. I'm good with computers, yada, yada. I can schedule things like that and say, so this person that just started coming just a few weeks ago now becomes somebody who's fully engaged and is actually assisting you. And in that sense, when you're in that place where you're not sure what's there for you now because you've raised up so many people to do what you've been doing, well, guess what? You can now you've created your own space on the mountainside, right? You've created your own space, and you can trust that God's going to have you step into something, whether it be outside of our church, within our church, and so on. Again, back to the example here. So thankful for Pastor Bob and what he is doing here on the at the campus. That is actually what enables me to make this video, because until I had somebody else helping me with that stuff, I could just never get to this. I've been wanting to do it for a long time, and I couldn't get to it because of all the other responsibilities that were on my plate. And I really wasn't thinking about it until such time as Bob's on. Then I realized, oh wow, I actually can do this. All right, this is something that was in my mind and my heart, but it wasn't even a possibility, and now it becomes a possibility. These same kinds of things, in small ways and large ways and so on, are things that can be on your heart as you raise them up. Now, last point. Sorry, again, this was much longer than it normally would be in the first video. But last point. Let's think about this for just a second in terms of how impacting this would be. If we were able to accomplish this within a couple of months, we were able to double the number of volunteers that we had surveying our ministries. Within just a couple of months, we did that. Think about this. Currently, we have almost 300 people attending Deer Lakes. Okay, if what Pastor Chung has said is true, and I fully believe that it is, if we were to do that in a couple of months, that would mean that by Christmas next year, our normal weekend attendance would be 600, nearly 600 people coming to Deer Lakes. 600 people of all ages, including children, 600 people by Christmas of next year. That's how impacting this might be. And you know what? We got big problems with the building. I'm going to ask that you pray about it, because every single time we go to sit down, and it seems like every week it gets more complicated and it gets more expensive. And it's primarily out of my hands. I hope that I have something to share with you soon. Right now, I don't even know what's going to happen as far as the building is concerned. I truly don't know. But if we do this, we make a very complex decision very easy if we are growing at such a rate that it becomes impractical for us to think about the current facility. That makes the problem very simple. I'd much rather have that than a complex issue of, well, maybe we should, and then we only invest this much because we're still not thinking it's going to be enough for us. So, and we're just caught in this place of trying to figure out what to do. It's arduous and it's been going on for so long. So this has a lot of ramifications, obviously, a lot of significant things. And I'd love it if you guys would take this and really pray about it. Pray about, okay, it's not so much about how many people I need to do what I need to do. Maybe it's about how many people can I use? What are more roles that I can create? And what is it I'm currently doing that I can delegate and raise up somebody to do, even if I'm not really sure what that leaves me to do? Because we will figure that out. God will download to you the next thing, if nothing else, as a reward for having invested those talents of silver so very well, and seeing some fruitfulness as a result of you raising up and delegating the authority and the position that God has given you. Right? Bless you all. Again, so very sorry. This is much longer than I expected it to be. But I do love you, and I'm very thankful for you, praying for you. And as always, I welcome any feedback that you might have as we move forward together at APC Deer Lakes. I will see you again at least in 2 weeks, possibly next Friday. All right. Thanks. Bye.